Hello, this is Jennifer Wright from the Mining Industry Human Resources Council live from Ottawa, Ontario. On behalf of MIR and the entire Ensemble Network, welcome to our webcast. We will begin in just a moment. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties with the session, please use the chat box in the corner of your screen. Before we launch the webinar, I want to take a minute to walk everyone through the platform. In the corner of your screen, you will find the chat box I've mentioned. You can use this box at any time to share comments with us. Feel free to submit comments at any time during today's webinar. However, we ask that you save your questions for presenters to address at the end of the session. All questions specifically directed towards MIR will be addressed after the webcast to ensure our presenters have optimal time to share their messages and answer questions. All listeners are encouraged to participate. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please invite your colleagues and contacts to join the Ensemble Network. Ensemble is a free-to-join diversity and inclusion network where members receive alerts for future webinars as well as updates on exciting industry events. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Ensemble Network webcast. Thank you to all of our listeners who tuned in today. My name is Jennifer Wright, Senior Director of Employment and Diversity Initiatives for the Mining Industry Human Resources Council, and joining me today is a few special guest speakers. We have Kristen Cuddington, Lana Eagle, Nalaine Morn, Rachel Ambrus. They will be talking to us today about Women in Mining Trailblazer Awards. As many of you know, MIR established its mandate to identify opportunity and ultimately address the HR and labour market challenges in the Canadian minerals metal sector. The Canadian mining industry faces a significant challenge in establishing a sustainable supply of labour that is able to withstand mining's economic volatility. MIR, through its labour market intelligence, has identified a number of factors exacerbating this challenge. Canada's aging population continues to have a significant impact, and diverse groups such as women and newcomers to Canada are underrepresented in the mining labour force. Our research indicates that women comprise half of Canada's population and about 48% of its labour force, yet in the mining labour force, women represent only 17%. Improving this statistic involves a combination of collaborative solutions, from encouraging young girls to pursue math and science studies, to building a gender-inclusive awareness of the industry, to appointing more women to senior leadership and board positions. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Christine to start the webinar.
Hi, and thank you to everyone for participating in the webcast. My name is Kristen Cuddington, and I'm a member of the board of Women in Mining Canada, and I'll be hosting this webcast on behalf of WIM Canada. Please note that this webcast will be recorded and made available online. Link will be posted on the WIM Canada website. It's our pleasure to be able to provide this opportunity to Nalaine Morn and Rachel Ambrus. These are two truly remarkable women who will be discussing how the culture of mining has changed from two different perspectives. This is the inaugural year for both the Indigenous Trailblazer and Student Indigenous Trailblazer Awards. Today, we are privileged to welcome Lana Eagle as the moderator for this webinar, a trailblazer in her own right. Most recently, Lana was awarded the Sukum Jim Award at this year's PDAC. Lana is a member of the Whitecap Dakota First Nation in Saskatchewan. Lana's detailed bio is included on the slide. She has many other accomplishments to her name, but if I had to pick just one, it would be her ongoing work in drawing a pathway towards a reconciliation framework with the mining industry. Thank you, Lana, for being here and moderating this panel of WIM Canada's first Indigenous Trailblazer Awards, Nalaine Morn and Rachel Ambrus. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Kristen. Thank you so much, everyone, for being today, attending the webinar. I thought I was nervous, but I am, even though you can't see me, and I'm sure glad you can't, because I'm not looking like a typical Monday morning at the office person. But anyway, I'm really happy to be chatting today with Nalaine and Rachel. Some of you may have had a chance to meet them or see them receive their award at the PDAC Women in Mining event. And for those of you that haven't, I know you're tuning in today. And what I want to do is sort of delve deeper into the conversation and sort of see where they come out in terms of being women and being Indigenous and being in mining. So there's three great topics to discuss. So first, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Nalaine. I've known Nalaine for a lot of years, and it's through this time that we co-present, or I'm moderating and she's presenting, that we get truly to know one another. And we've also had an opportunity to meet for wine, and those are great times, and we can talk about our worlds and how they may have some continuity, but certainly being women in mining is one of them, and being Indigenous women in mining is another. Nalaine has a remarkable background when it comes to her education. She holds a Bachelor of Applied Science degree from the University of BC and a Mechanical Engineer Technology diploma from BCIT. And she is also the principal of her own consulting company. And she's done many things. And what I'll do is I'll turn it over to her to talk a little bit more about herself. And Nalaine, if I can just switch it to you right now, that'd be great.
Hello, everyone. I'm very, very happy to be here today. As Lana said, my name is Nalaine Morn, and I'm a member of the Tahltan First Nation. I've been involved and working in the mining industry for my whole career in various areas and disciplines. I had the opportunity to work at a number of different mines across Canada, in a number of different areas, including base metal mining, in the tar sands, in diamonds. And yes, diamonds truly are a girl's best friend. I've also had the opportunity to make some steel out in Ontario. One of the things that certainly drives me in the work that I do is ensuring that there is a balance between our ideals, our values, our Indigenous governance, and the work that we do in the mining industry. So it was important for me to achieve, an understanding, a professional background, a place in the decision-making in and around resource project development, coupled with my background, or who I am as an Indigenous person, has, allowed me to do some really interesting things in the mining industry. So I'm very happy to be here today.
Thank you, Nalaine. And it's also my pleasure to introduce to you Rachel, who is the winner of the Indigenous Student Trailblazer Award. And while Rachel is probably much younger than you and I, Nalaine, she also has, in her time as a student at UBC studying geology, has been able to start to capture a wide breadth of experience being a woman and being Indigenous. So, Rachel, can you take a few moments to introduce yourself to us?
Sorry there, I was muted. Absolutely. So my name is Rachel Ambrus. I am a member of the Métis Nation First Nations in British Columbia, and my family originates from the Cold Lake region in northern Alberta. So I have been involved in the mining industry for about 5 years now. I'm graduating from geological engineering this year, and I've worked in a pretty diverse amount of environments, like you said. I started out working in the mill and mechanical engineering sector of a gold mine in Kamloops. I've also worked in sawmills and manufacturing plants through British Columbia, which gave me a bit of exposure to a bit more of a blue-collar, male-dominated sort of industry, which allowed me a bit of a chance to open my eyes to some of the challenges that are faced and the way that this culture is changing. I've also worked in some coal mines in the geology and production sectors through BC, and have recently entered the consulting sector, doing some work with tailings dam design and liquefaction assessment. So I'm just entering the workforce in a couple weeks now, and I'm pretty excited for what's going to be ahead of me and for the changes I'm going to be seeing as we come up. And I'm also really excited to hear some more from Nalaine's perspective. And yeah, so thank you.
You're quite welcome. Well, it's really great to have both of you here today. And I imagine when you received word of this, you were probably going in your mind, wow, this is a great honor. But can you share with me what you initially thought, what was going through your mind when you received news of this award, Nalaine?
Well, I was truly humbled by this opportunity and this experience. You know, when we get out into the working industry, it's almost put your head down, you know, march forward, get the work done, and never really thinking about or appreciating that, you know, some of the work that you're doing is truly having an impact on others. So, you know, just this opportunity and the most recent opportunity that I received from the Women in Mining in BC has, you know, given me a chance to sit back and reflect on, you know, the positive relationships that I've been able to develop, you know, with government, industry, First Nations throughout my career. I feel very lucky and fortunate.
Thank you, Nalaine. And Rachel, you are much younger than Nalaine and I are. And so to be called a trailblazer this early in your life, was that something that you had worked towards, or was this all new to you, being a trailblazer?
Well, Nalaine certainly has a really good point that in work, you're kind of keeping your head down, you're focusing on the task ahead, and it's kind of interesting getting this award and having the chance to reflect and look at the wider implications of what I may be doing, what may be coming ahead, and what the women who have came before me have done for the industry. So that chance to reflect has definitely been incredibly valuable. I first entered the industry, honestly, with very little consideration of the impact or what it means to be entering as a woman or Indigenous person into this field. I had an interest in working in remote communities. I find mining fascinating and was very excited for a chance to work in it. And it wasn't until, you know, actually starting in the workforce that I started to realize what this really means and all that. So I never really considered myself a trailblazer, but I found that with time, as I gain experience and move forward, I've had to learn different leadership techniques and ways to assert myself in a way that maybe men in the industry may not have to. So I think that this recognition is absolutely, it floors me, and I'm very excited for this opportunity. And I think that in a way, most of us are trailblazers, especially in the mining industry. And I'm very thankful for all the great and incredible women I've met and Indigenous people that have trailblazed the way for me to get to this point in my career. So thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. So we seem to be talking a lot today, you know, in our sector about diversity and inclusion. And I'm sure many of us can see the positive results of how our companies, you know, who we work for, are trying to create new policies and processes in place to be more diverse and to be more inclusive. But to you two individually, both being women and both being Indigenous, what does diversity and inclusion mean to you in the workplace? And you've both talked about being in different workplaces. Nalaine, you've talked about workplaces across Canada. And while your experience, and Rachel, has been in BC, you've talked about different industries. You even mentioned one being more blue collar. So what today, as an individual, would diversity and inclusion mean to you? Rachel, let's start with you.
So for diversity and inclusion, I think we are making some very impressive headway moving forward. And I've never really been exposed to the industry less than 5 years ago. And talking to those around me, particularly women who came before me, I learn how much the industry has changed and how many doors have been opened that I and those who follow me may not be able to go through in this day and age. So it's really interesting to learn what they've had to go through. Of course, there is still there's a lot that can be done. And I think a lot of this does go back to culture and finding ways to allow more work-life balance. I think the mining industry does have a huge potential for First Nations groups, particularly being from more rural areas. And I think that having that kind of access to a workplace where you may be able to work 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, go home, return to the to the reserve, and not have those restrictions is really important and allows people an opportunity to stay close to their home. So then kind of exposing people to these opportunities a little bit more, opening more discussion and allowing people to actually visualize themselves in these positions are important. And that really just starts with representation and allowing people access to see other women succeeding in these roles. So.
Okay, thank you. And Nalaine, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that it's been difficult but rewarding experience to be, a woman in the mining industry. It's important to understand, there is the need to achieve, a work-life balance, but then thinking about the 2 and 2 type shift, how do we ensure that there's continuity, in our family and bringing up children and, when you're in camp. And so I think that's something that's really important for us to be thinking about, and another is most recently I, was looking at the statistics for Indigenous registration in the engineering field. And in 2016, the number was 1%. So you can imagine that, when, I went to school, which was a few years ago, that the number was much lower. And so, as an individual who, is working towards encouraging others to take on, these responsibilities and forging a new path, you have to be strong in representation of yourself and your interests. Because I think at the end of the day, that diversity really helps us to get to a better solution, a better project. It helps us to work towards reconciliation of different interests.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you both for sharing, what you feel on that. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I know that for some people, mining's reality has been a very sad case of, feeling sexually assaulted or having been sexually assaulted at work. And I think social media often brings to mind certain situations, that we may not feel maybe the freedom to talk about openly. And one of the quotes that I'm reading from the Me Too Mining Association is, you can find it on their Twitter account, and PNG had commented, and she said, "We can encourage inclusion and diversity, but unless we change the culture, it is going to be a revolving door." And for some of us, the reality of the culture that we have to face on a daily basis isn't very positive, whether it's catcalling or really terrible jokes that we have to listen to or we feel we have to. How can we work with that? And how would you, if you were in a negative situation like that, how would you represent yourself? And maybe we can take a lesson from your thoughts on this. Nalaine, did you want to start?
Sure. Thinking about, different experiences that I've had in the mining industry, I think I've been very fortunate that, I was treated with, a great deal of respect. everywhere that, I worked. But, there are times where, you're faced with situations where you have to make a decision, and, that may not necessarily have been the most ideal. And I think in those kinds of situations, it's really important to fall back on what is correct for you and to stand up on that. And I think that, most recently, I worked with individual in the mining industry, another fellow female Indigenous person who didn't have that experience. She had a very negative experience. And, I think it's important for us as Indigenous women to stand up together and to support one another. And, making sure that for us to be able to really contribute, we need to be in a reasonable and respected place. We went to school the same as everyone else. We have the same degrees. We have the same experience, and we have the capability to contribute to a better mining project. And I think that's what we have to stand up on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Rachel, what are your thoughts on that?
I've been fairly fortunate, and I've never encountered any real harassment or catcalling or anything of that like. However, what I do find is the most demoralizing is the many instances where I feel that my opinion isn't being properly listened to, or even just in terms of safety issues. I will bring something to the table and it may get tossed aside as I just simply may not know how to properly drive a truck or what have you. However, if a male counterpart with the same experience and position as myself brings the problem to the table, it will immediately get addressed. So I find that very, very demoralizing, but also believe that when going into this kind of industry, it lags a little bit behind some of the other fields I've seen regarding inclusion and such. And you have to kind of accept that you will encounter these points at some time in your career, and have faith in your own knowledge, have faith in your own abilities and understanding, and continuing to push forward. I found that in the positions I've worked at, it takes a few months and working one-on-one with people to gain the respect for people to actually listen to what I have to say. However, when reaching that point, it was incredibly valuable. So yeah, I really think one of the biggest concerns is that lack of listening that may be happening to women in the field. Yeah, so that's one of my biggest concerns. I also have been noticing some changes in the culture as we have been moving forward, and particularly in the last 2 years, there seems to be a lot more anxiety relating to having women working in this industry. Just based on the huge diversity of people you work with and differences in backgrounds, I find that it's kind of hard to imagine that you wouldn't be encountering a couple comments or inappropriate behaviors that, of course, you must address, bring to light why it may not be a good thing to hear or to say. However, just because of the recent severity of allegations and such, I've been noticing a lot of anxiety in my workplace surrounding having a woman on the workforce and listening to this kind of talk to people around her. So I'm really hoping we can find a way to allow women to have a safe and comfortable position in the workplace and actually be heard while not running entirely on instilling fear in the people around us. So
I think too, as Indigenous people, what we have knowledge of, whether it's with us individually or family or friends, in the community that we grew up in, is some of the issues that face us today as people, whether it's the issue of murdered and missing Indigenous women, or whether it's around high levels of incarceration, violence in homes, poverty, the lack of access to clean water and electrification. And the list can go on and on and on. But the one thing that I've learned is, resilience and how we have become a very resilient people. But when it comes to getting into mining and to entering that as a person, in the workforce or pursuing a career academically, whether it's, studying geology or geological engineering or mining engineering, that in itself can be a huge challenge, what we're faced with in terms of perhaps the limited experience we may have, in the workplace, or, being knowledgeable about the culture of mining and mineral exploration. But, we talk about that culture, and an interesting definition that I've heard about reconciliation is finding the way forward together, finding how we can work together. So when we think of reconciliation along those lines, have either of you seen reconciliation taking place in the workplace where mining cultures are attempting to change, and Indigenous people are attempting to better understand that workplace environment? And I'd be really interested in hearing what you have to say about this. Nalaine.
I think there's actually some really good examples out there in the industry where we're starting to see different cultures come together. Part of that, that reconciliation is driven, of course, by implementation of impact benefit agreements. But part of it is just a willingness of, parties to work together. There are some really good examples basically, across Canada in different places where First Nations and or Indigenous people and mining companies are working well together. I hate to give specific examples, given that I'm sure that I'm going to miss a few. But, I know that there are certainly some that are definitely out there and doing some great work.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Rachel.
Well, I'm really early into the industry, and I've been fortunate enough to work in a lot of workplaces that really do have a lot of respect for diversity and the Aboriginal people of whom they are mining the land of. And so I've seen a lot of really good examples. And even in school, we've really been trying to integrate Aboriginal rights, Aboriginal law into our programs, which is now a mandatory topic, which we almost address in university. And I'm not sure if it's always been that way, but I certainly think does add a lot of value. In the workplace, I found that everywhere I have worked, during the introduction days, they always make a point of recognizing the traditional land and recognizing the people. So that I definitely do see a lot of benefit from. Additionally, too, in hiring, I see not so much a high, but a relatively decent proportion of Aboriginal people working on these projects, which is really important that the land that's being disrupted, it's the people who are actually traditionally of that land have an involvement with the project. So I have seen some definitely good examples, but I also certainly haven't been exposed to everything that goes on in the industry and really feel like I've only just scraped the surface. So I'm interested to see what I'm going to find as I dig deeper and hear more stories from other people. So.
Yeah, I think there's some really good examples, as Nalaine has said, across Canada, several mining operations and what they do, and even mineral exploration, wanting to include Indigenous peoples in how they move forward on a project. But as women, do we feel the same way? And I know that there's differing opinions out there. People have worked within an old boys network for such a long time that it's an almost constant place of trying to prove yourself. And you brought this up, Rachel, of having a voice, being listened to the first time and not having to scream to make it known what your concerns are or what you would hope to do to make things more efficient or operate better. So I think it's about being heard. And I know that some companies such as BHP Billiton have made a huge commitment to having more women employed, and so that they have some very high numbers that they want to achieve in there. in their HR side, which is I think 50% women being employed. And so, as a woman, what would your definition be of inclusive? If you were to come up with one word that would explain being inclusive, what would that word be? And I'll just leave it open. Either of you can go first.
Well, I would think that sustainability is one of the utmost concerns with diversity. When you look at women in engineering programs, which is traditionally a bit of a boys' club, the numbers are high going into it, but not so much leaving. So trying to find a sustainable approach to retain women is very important, likewise with Aboriginal.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Nalaine?
Yeah, I think I would focus on, the word inclusive in that. And I would focus on, again, diversification, but not of people, but of different interests, right? So when I was in school in engineering, way back, it was about, math, it was about science, it was principled about design. And now when you're in engineering, there's a lot more of the social sciences, as well as, more courses on understanding, Indigenous knowledge, Indigenous interests and rights, so that when you go out into the workforce, you're getting a much better balance of the interests when you go to apply the engineering principles that you've learned, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. So let me just sort of switch gears here a bit. And where you are today, I'm sure in your life you had someone that was your mentor, someone that you learned from and were happy to glean knowledge from in terms of how they conducted their own, whether, how they conducted business or how they treated people or how they themselves were trailblazers. And is there any one person that stands out in your mind that you are where you are today because of that person, and they took the time to answer your questions and to provide you knowledge and to encourage you? Nalaine?
Well, I certainly have a list of individuals in different areas that have really influenced my thinking. But if I were to identify one individual, it would be my dad. But within the nation, within the Tahltan Nation, there are a number of people that I would say, have really influenced my life and thinking. Strong Tahltan women like Cynthia Collison, Jerry Asp, who's been a trailblazer in his own right. In industry, there are a number of individuals that stand out for me. People like Alan Hare and Stephen West from Hud Bay, who I've, worked with quite closely in my, before I left industry. People that I work with today. And then, every single day, people that influence my life are people like my daughter and my husband. So there's a list for them.
It's interesting how you focus on family members like your dad and your husband and your daughter. I think that says a lot. And I know that your daughter is into figure skating, so I'm sure a lot of what you've come to, take up in your life and that sort of thing has had I'm sure as much as she is a mentor for you, you are a mentor for her, and that head down hard work approach that you take, to all of the different things that get put in your direction.
Well, and as well, so my sister and my two brothers, I have to mention them too. We're a very strong, connected family.
That's excellent. And Rachel, what about you for the mentors in your life?
Well, I definitely have to go back to family for certain. My grandmother, she's found a point in time when there was a lot more discrimination and she was held back in so many ways I can't even imagine on account of being Aboriginal. And the way she's managed to build such a strong family, so many strong connections, and really persevere through everything is a great inspiration to me. And you can still strongly see the remnants of that in my family and in my cousins, and the efforts they go through to make lives better for their children, for their families, and for the people they are connected to. So I definitely gain a lot of strength from that. On a professional level, there are no engineers or anyone with too much of an college education in my family. So I've grown a network from beginning my education, and I'm really excited to watch it grow more. I found that the coordinators of my program in geological engineering, Eric Eberhardt and Susan Hollingshead, have really shown a lot of faith in me and a lot of support and answered questions that maybe some people could turn to their parents to, but I've been a bit lost on. So without them, I really don't think I could be where I am today.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing how we achieve great things, such as you winning the Trailblazer Awards, and we still rely on people to help us move, in the direction that our careers are taking us. So if we look forward now and we see, where's Nalaine, where is Rachel, let's say 10 years from now, where do you hope to be? And we'll start with you, Rachel.
Well, 10 years is a very long time. Looking back 10 years ago, I just turned 13 and truly had no idea I'd be involved in the mining industry. So I know for certain that I want to be blazing ahead. I want to take the challenging options. I want to continue to push myself into new and unfamiliar terrain. And most importantly, I want to support those around me. I know a lot of people considering going into my field, and I want to maintain connections with them and help them. I want to do everything I can to help my family out, and those are for certain. On a more professional level, I have quite a bit of interest in tailings design, and I'm really hoping to move a path forward in the tailings engineering sector, which is definitely growing in complexity. So that's I definitely want to stay in BC and stay close to my family.
Thank you for that. And Nalaine, what do you hope to do in the next 10 years?
Well, I would like to say I would like to be retired, but I just don't see that in the fabric of my being. So I would like to continue to make positive contributions to the industry, and continue to foster and develop, some of the very, very good, amazing relationships that I've developed with people in the industry that also are like-minded and share the same goal. In the last, 2 to 3 years, we've seen significant change, and I would just like to continue to contribute to that change so that, people that are up and coming in the industry have a bit of a forged path to follow. So Rachel, I'm working to help you and to help others see change in the industry. And I can tell you in the experience that I've had to date is that, we've started going down that path with Absolutely. Only more exciting new change to come.
And without your efforts,
very good words.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Rachel. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to add on, without those efforts, I really don't think that I'd be able to have such a comfortable entry into the field and see so many strong women and Indigenous people. So thank you for the perseverance over the years.
Well, thank you to each of you for participating today and for answering my questions. It's been a real honor to talk to both of you as trailblazers, and I wish you the very best in your careers and what you hope to do for other people, Indigenous or women or both, entering the industry, is to create that place where we can all be successful in what we do. And Nalaine, thank you for sharing that head down, hard at work approach. And I think that's what we all strive to do. and then to hear from you, Rachel, that, just to be heard and listened to. And I think that's just, we can point fingers and we can say, well, men aren't listening to us, but really, when we think of our society, where we've come to, do we really listen anymore? And I think sometimes it's really good just to slow it down and to spend time with people and to really listen. And the more opportunities we have to do that, whether it's in the workplace or in our communities or with our families, I think it enriches us and our society more and more. And perhaps what that does is it starts to change our viewpoint. So listening to someone like you, Rachel, you have a very positive outlook on life, and I think that's going to take you far as you go ahead. And for Nalaine, you've experienced a lot of interesting things in your career. And, it's interesting because I'm one of those people off to the side listening and watching people, and you're in my list of people that are very, very busy out there and very industrious. And, it's that head down approach, that working hard approach. But I think that you have seen, the vastness of Canada, and in terms of, what workplaces are like in terms of their culture. And you have experienced positive experiences from that. And you said something very interesting, and that was, that you are respected wherever you go. And I think if there's one learning thing, another that we can take away from this is, oftentimes we may not feel we're respected, but I think that if we show respect, we can earn respect. It's kind of one of those funny things, it's like a law of physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And maybe it's not that simplified, but I think, being respectful is a huge part of who we are as Indigenous people, and how we can work with, different attitudes in the workplace that may not always be in our favor. So I really do thank you today for sharing from your hearts and for helping us better understand why you are trailblazers. There's no doubt in my mind why you should be recognized, be part of this, and asking you questions. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back to Kristen, and I know that some of you have been tapping in your questions, and I don't have the screen in front of me. I didn't want to have the screen in front of me, but my friends who are on the line have texted me to say they're there. So even though I don't know you're there, I know you're there because you texted me, and thank you for your well wishes. So I'll turn it back to you, Kristen.
Great, thanks. No, it's been a really good discussion. I just wanted to say that I think people have been really caught up in kind of the dialogue between the three, and there actually is nothing in the question box. I think that you guys have done such a great job kind of providing your perspectives. I can give it a couple minutes if there's any listeners out there that do have questions that they want to ask Nalaine, Rachel, and Lana. Just type it in the box on the screen there in the navigation, and we'll be able to pose those to our trailblazers. So I'll just move things along, but I'll still keep an eye on that questions field on some upcoming webcasts. But again, thank you to Nalaine, Rachel, and Lana for your time today and for the discussion. Before we end things off, WIM Canada would like to mention an upcoming webcast later in May. The date is still to be determined, where we'll talk about mentorship, informal and formal relationships, which has been a big discussion point. We're looking at diversity. So keep a lookout. We'll start advertising soon. For more information on WIM Canada, please visit us online or follow us on social media. If you've enjoyed today's discussion, please invite your colleagues to to join the Ensemble Network. Ensemble is free to join, Diversity and Inclusion Network, where members receive alerts for future webinars, as well as updates on exciting industry events. Again, this webcast will be available online for those unable to tune in. Link will be posted on the WIM Canada website. Okay, we do have a question here. I'll just read this out and then we can see who best to field it. So usually a mentor in the industry is a great thing. Have either ladies had one? And this is from Kim. So I'm thinking maybe if you're talking more of a formal relationship with a mentor, or even if it's been informal? I know you talked a little bit about family, but Nalaine, do you have a comment?
Yes, I think I've never officially had an identified mentor, but I know that through the engineering and training process, there are people that are specifically assigned to you. So there were a number of people that when I went through the engineering in training at Hud Bay, that I would consider mentors that had some influence in my my development through that process.
Thanks for that, Nalaine. Rachel, comments?
Hi. Yeah, entering the industry, I've worked closely with quite a few people. However, I never have had a formal mentor. It's something I'm looking forward to when I actually enter industry and start my engineering training process. So I really think that having a mentor, specifically one that may understand the different issues that you're going through, be able to provide some insight on their own methods of handling and gaining respect, is highly valuable. So I've had so many great conversations with some of the incredible women I've worked with, and have learned quite a bit of the ways that they use to gain respect, be listened to, and show respect to others. So.
Great, thank you. There's actually another question here. It says, hello, do either of our speakers, oh, sorry, I'm just reading the same one. This one says, do either of our speakers, both very good, and thank you, have experience with workplace education that has helped to improve the culture, either as women or Indigenous people? And that's from Al. So maybe Rachel, do you want to start us off?
Sure thing. I have definitely experienced quite a few attempts at trying to increase inclusivity in the workplace, some of which I found seem to be a little bit more canned and almost harmful or preachy, and others which have been highly effective. So I think it's really important that when we approach these seminars or formal training places, training opportunities in the workplace, that we try and actually look at where we're going, try to engage a bit of a personal perspective rather than just entering, reading off a script, and leaving. So yeah, I've encountered that a couple times. I found out probably one of the most effective interventions I've seen was in my program, geological engineering. In one class, we just started a conversation, and someone asked a question about how to properly be listened to or how to handle issues with women in the workplace. And all of the females in the class started talking about different issues they've had, ways they've handled it, and we all learned techniques from each other. But the men in the class were absolutely shocked at what some of us go through and exactly how universal these issues are. So I really found that discussion was invaluable.
Thanks, Rachel. Nalaine, any comments?
I would say that I've also had similar experiences. I've been at different mine sites where the learning and education has been quite innovative. I think the work that was done, one in mind is a caddy where they had the opportunity to learn specific skills right at site. I think cultural awareness or cultural diversity training is a must. And, I like seeing that, a number of operations, a number of different mine sites have now embraced that as part of their, training opportunities. So.
Great. One more question here, and this one's from Pam. Nalaine, I'm going to get you to start things off, but I'll just read the question first. Have you found that Indigenous women find it difficult working in the mining industry with their own communities opposing mining? How does one make it work effectively in both worlds?
Coming from a nation who has lengthy experience in mining, I've seen a bit of both. I know that, some of our experiences over the years, specifically related with mining, have been, interesting in that a lot of it was driven by uncertainty and fear. And I think one of the things that I took away from these experiences, so we've had roadblocks, in demonstrations in our nation, by members of our nation who have been very strong in their statement about no mining in specific areas. And, what we took away from those experiences were, learning outcomes that we've integrated into the work that we do today, right? So understanding that, areas, lands that are sacred, that are used by the nation to support, the nation's Aboriginal rights, need to be fully understood and respected. So I think for me, being in these kinds of different experiences, the one thing I learned was just to listen, to understand, and to respect the information that's being presented to you.
Thanks, Nalaine. Those are some really good comments. Rachel, I know you're newer to the industry or just kind of starting your career. Do you have any comments or anything you'd like to add to what Nalaine said?
She's absolutely correct about having to listen, and that really being probably one of those critical factors I found. I've had the fortune of not really working on too many highly controversial projects or having that kind of, I guess, tear between values. So I am aware that I'm definitely going to encounter that in the future, though. In all the projects I've worked on, once I was asked to work in a pipelining project, which was a little controversial, and I really appreciated how my workforce actually reached out to me and they asked if I'm comfortable with this, and if not, I can take on another project. And actually having that opportunity to voice my concerns and have someone listen really made me feel a greater connection to my workforce. So.
Right. No, I think that definitely provides kind of a different take on things that you don't normally think about. It's just having that opportunity to kind of, be involved in the things that you believe in. So great. That was the last question that we had. I'm just going to just finish things off. So thank you to everyone for participating in the webcast, and congratulations again to our Indigenous Trailblazer, Nalaine Morn, and student Indigenous Trailblazer, Rachel Ambrus. The last slide I have is just contact information. If any of the listeners would like to reach out to our speakers or our moderator, we'll just provide that at the end here, and they've all indicated that if you want to reach out to them directly, then by all means. So that is all we have. Thanks again to everyone for tuning in.
Thank you, Kristen, for moderating this session, and thank you to the presenters. Please do stay connected with Ensemble. A recording of today's webinar will be available on the Ensemble site within a few days, and I invite you also to review the monthly Ensemble blog post as well. So this does conclude our Ensemble webcast for today. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday and join us for the next webinar coming up soon. Thank you.